everybody. This is Mike Oppenheim, and you are listening or watching Coffin Talk, interviews with the living. This week, our guest is Dr. Lynn Banis, and she's no stranger to grief. Within 3 short years, she lost her mother, her little brother, and her husband. She has a PhD in human behavior and decades of experience in coaching, so she knew what to do and has the tools to help others, and that's why she created Widows Rising Together, to help widows and others overcome loneliness and rediscover joy and purpose in life. Welcome to the show, Lynn, and I love your biography, and I'm excited to ask you all sorts of questions. So,
Oh, thank you. I'm excited to be here, so let's go.
awesome. The first question that we ask all guests, and there's only one other question we ask all guests, which is, what do you think
Okay.
happens when you die? But the first one is, how old are you? Where did you grow up? And what generation, if any, do you consider yourself a member of?
Well, I'm a baby boomer, and I am 77 years old. I grew up in a little town in Southwest Michigan, and I think that's all you asked, isn't it?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay.
Do you belong to a generation? Do you feel like you're part
Oh,
of
I
some?
said baby boomer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, that was it. Cool. No, we ask those questions just to kind of get people grounded, especially for people listening. But sometimes like some weird things come out about culture and stuff like that that I tend to nip at. But with you, I really just want to get into the meat of the conversation, which is I think your mission as of now to help widows is incredible, and I really appreciate it. And my parents are still together, but one of them may be a widow or a widower at some point. So this subject
Absolutely. Yeah.
obviously applies to me not only now but in my own future because I am married. And I'm curious, have you ever worked with? And I'm sorry if I'm using the wrong term, but do you discern between widow and widower? Is that like
I do not.
okay?
I do not. As a matter of fact, I will work with anyone who has had a significant loss that has resulted in them losing their identity.
Hmm.
So, it can be job loss, it can be best friend, it can be animal, whatever. But those are big, big deals in our lives.
Cool. Cool as in I respect that and like that. So I doubt you were shocked when you became a widow because you've of the work you've done in your life and just also with how life goes. But what was something that was shocking about it? Like, what was something that people may not see coming, even if they see it coming?
Well, my husband went in the hospital for a very minor operation. He had stage 1 prostate cancer, and he didn't make it. So, I mean, yeah, shock is a good word.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because I had gone home to feed the dogs, and I get a call from the ICU saying he's gone into AFib. We've got him in the ICU. And, that was that.
Yeah. Did did they make you this is such a weird detailed question, but I think people want to know these kind of things. And I was shocked
Sure.
when my mom had a serious surgery and they didn't tell us she was okay. They made us sit in this small room, my dad and I, and we
Uh-huh.
just sat there, my dad and I, like in the most awkward father-son silence of my life. No one wanting to talk, no one wanting to do anything. And then the doctor came in, sat down, and then with, no discernible expression, they finally said she's okay. But in that moment, I was like, oh, this is like a Schrodinger's cat. This is like a weird moment in time where I don't know if my mom made it or not, and I'm being forced to like sit here and wait. So I'm actually just curious, did you have to go back to the hospital and go into like a room where they told you about him, or were you able to visit him in the ICU when he was still alive?
Well, I asked the doctor right away. I said, "Do I need to come right now?" And he said, "No, we are working on him. I will call you in a little bit when we get him stabilized." And he didn't call and didn't call. And finally, about 1:30 in the morning, he said, "You need to come right now." And I said, "Well, it'll take me about 20 minutes to get there." And he said, "I don't think he has that long." I was not not pleased, but the interesting thing is that he held on. His heart kept beating until I took his hand.
Ah, that is sweet. I got little chills on my arms. That's
Yeah.
yeah, no, that goes a long way with my personality and just how my life has gone. And I'm curious when you were in that situation, like there's anger, there's just why did this happen? Why did this happen to me? Why did the doctors wait? Like all of that is going on. But I'm also curious, how you would help those of us who are on the other side of this event with this feeling like we even have any control. How do you assess and deal with a client or a person you're talking to when they still have that I can control death, I can control the family members around me, I can control safety?
This is going to sound terrible. I'd like to know what your proof is because it's not working. But that's just my goofy sense of humor, and I would never say that to anybody. But it that is just part of the process
Uh-huh.
because it's part of the inability to believe what's and cope with and understand and deal with what's just happened. It's our brains immediately change when we lose something that big. And so what the brain is trying to do is to protect us. And so between your high emotions and the brain trying to change synapses and stuff, there's just no communication.
Yeah. Um, and that really, I mean, I think my life is like one of incredulous wonder. I just every day my eyes actually get wider and more open, not the other way around, and that's very contrary to how I predicted the aging process. When I was young, I looked at older people as like fixed and solid and aware, and they knew what was going on, and I thought they had all the answers. And then when that bottom dropped out, it was like a pretty severe moment for me. It actually coincided. I was like 18 or 19 when 9/11 happened, and that's when I realized, oh,
Uh,
there's no adult in the room. Like this is just a fantasy that any of us are actually controlling anything. And but between then, that gulf of me as an 18-year-old getting like very upset by that to now I'm 43 and I'm actually confident that it's good to know that it's actually healthy to not feel like you have control. And so like as I meander closer and closer to the end of my life, i I embrace that as much as I can, as often as I can. But this conversation, what we're really talking about, losing your spouse, because I know you lost also two other people, and I read that, and I may get to that or I may not. But the thing that I think, especially in our Western culture, where we idolize marriage and we talk about this like moment in your life where all your friends and family will be there rooting for you, and then you hear varying reports. It's difficult, it's not difficult, it's a challenge, you have to work at it, and everyone has a different experience in it. But the fear of losing your spouse is, I think, pretty common among happily married or want to be happily married couples. Um, is it as bad as the fear is? Like, how can you explain and relate that part?
it's different for everybody, just like going through grief process is different for everybody. And I think it depends a lot on your belief system. It depends on your self-limiting beliefs, what you tell yourself, what you expect. It depends on your belief about what life should be like and is going to be like. Um, my husband was a bit of a hypochondriac, and so there was always something. And you get to the point where you kind of say, well, I did say to a doctor, I said, please tell me, is there something I should really worry about? And instead of, he said, oh, I get you. And because they can't say
Yeah.
anything. And then he said, yes, this situation, it is cause for concern. But that then you kind of buffer it. I mean, he always thought he was going to die young, and there's no reason. And he was very healthy, and so you know, I think that all of that meshes together. But as you started out mentioning, we've got to understand this is just a part of life, and it's going to happen to us one way or another during our lifetime. So it's so important. A couple things. One is that we learn to accept it and not accept this taboo that we have around it, and that we learn how to behave toward the person that's grieving, toward our family, and so on and so forth. And then we have to talk with our spouse, and we have to figure out what the person needs, what they want, get all of those questions answered, get your stuff in, all your ducks in a row. My sister-in-law couldn't get into my brother's computer for almost 3 weeks. And their son is a computer guru, and it took him 3 weeks to get in. And part of it's because of the job he had. He had to have all sorts of things there, but still, it's bad enough to have lost your spouse, but then everybody's wanting this, that, and the other piece of information, and if you can't get it, you don't need that frustration on top of everything else.
Yeah, no, I really we had a healthcare scare recently in my family with my parents, and this brought this entire conversation up, and it's a conversation I have gone out of my way to tell my parents, please don't have this with me. It's not because I can't think about it or don't want to think about it. It's because it just makes me cry and I don't want to cry. But now I realize that that's like that makes sense, and I have compassion for myself, but it's also not going to help. And watching my mom and dad really they need me to help, like they need a third
Yeah,
person, and so
they
and my
do.
yeah and so that's kind of changed. And then meanwhile with my own family, with my children and my wife, I I am doing something similar but in reverse, which is I'm just kind of like, do whatever, I just don't want to burden you. The more I host the show, the more I'm aware that like if and when I pass before my wife does, she's going to be sold a casket. She's going to be sold a plot. She's going to like a lot of selling is going on. And so like my actual goal right now is not to say like don't buy, but just whatever makes you comfortable. And a friend of mine just recently related this to me. She said, I finally told my 3 children, you do what makes you sleep well at night after I pass. Um, I'm curious if part of what we're talking about borders on, and if you have any experience with the term like codependency, because that's the other. Yeah. Okay. So before I ask my question, I just want to mention like it seems bizarre to me that most of the narratives of the Disney movies my little daughters watch tell you that codependency is the greatest outcome possible and you'll live happily ever after. It seems to me, based on watching older people who were married a long time lose someone, that codependency is heartbreaking and terrible. What's your answer to that kind of weird?
And very frightening. I give you one example that after Bill passed and I had managed to get myself out the door to the grocery store, I'm standing there with a box of cereal in each hand, and I look at him. I bought these for 35 years, and I thought, which one of these do I even like?
Oh, God.
I was so used to taking care of the family and getting what the family wanted. I didn't even know what I wanted. I had totally lost my sense of self. And I think that happens very, very often. And that is a huge piece of that identity loss. Who am I now? What do I do? And that's why I think so many people feel that, I just don't want to live anymore, which is a really tough place to be in. And we need to help those people a lot. But I do understand why they're feeling that way, because there's nothing and you feel like you're totally untethered. You're just kind of floating somewhere. You've got all that brain fog and you have the pain.
And
So,
And you have a PhD in human behavior, which is like, I'm assuming psychological by nature, but it also intersects with behavioral economics, which is a subject I just kind of enjoy because I enjoy psychology. I enjoy like seeing where, for lack of a better word, capitalism meets Western psychology. And it's interesting because people can lie and people can say a lot of things, but the reason behavioral economics is interesting is it doesn't lie. Like people really don't tend to lie with how they spend money. So that was a weird introduction, but I think it'll make sense. How is the concept of marriage supporting what you believe in human nature, human behavior rather, and how is it contradicting like basic human behavior? Because I see and feel both in my marriage.
yeah, I think that, I would put the loss of self and identity as part of human behavior,
Okay.
because this is the way we tend to respond. We do experience the fight, flight, fawn response. And I think, for some people, it's the flight. I want to get away from this. I don't want this to have happened. And then there's others that fight and they want to argue and argue that everything's okay. And So I think that is a very typical human response. And then there's some that want to hide from it. That fawning is something that really wasn't there when I was growing up, but now they finally realize that it's just not fight or flight. But then if you look at the various aspects of the stages of grief, and please understand that I'm very aware that those have been debunked to some degree,
Cool.
but we do go through different emotional aspects, and it's not linear. We always thought it was linear. Well, it's not. And They are scientific. I mean, they have been documented over and over and over and over again. So I feel like that's a good indicator that that's typical of human behavior in such and such of a situation. Um, so I really don't differentiate there.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting because Becker's book and his concepts of death and bereavement really come up a lot on this show, and I find it like, first of all, I think we're going to debunk any theory as time moves on, but I think debunking the theory as an overarching principle of exactly what must be versus, hey, more often than not, you're probably going to encounter these 5 basic reactions to death. They might be circular and cyclical, but
That's right.
yeah.
You
So
might be in one right now and in a different one in 3 minutes.
yeah, thank you. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. So,
Yeah.
so I'm curious. I always ask every guest, what do you think happens when you die? And I try to tailor it to their professional curiosity and fields and things. So with yours, I'd like to know, what do you think happens when you die? And I'd also like to know what a human behavioralist would say about your answer.
Well, I am very spiritually in tune with the universe. And so I believe that we do go to heaven. I believe that there is an afterlife. Um, and not everybody does, which is, that's their prerogative. And I try to work within somebody's belief system. I certainly am not going to, break anything there. Um, but that's what I think happens. And I'll tell you, I was holding my mom's hand when she passed. We knew it was imminent because of the way she was breathing. And all of a sudden, her eyes opened wide and she went, oh, and then she closed her eyes, and that was that. So clearly, she saw something.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I take notes as I talk because I would need to remember my questions. And I was going to ask you to name an event that made you spiritual. That's clearly one. I'm curious, did you always feel a spiritual connection specifically with that word, like to the universe and to life, or is that something that developed as you got older?
That's developed as I've gotten older. And in one of the things that I truly believe is that, we are born fully equipped, and life happens, our society happens, and over time we forget who we are and what we were designed for. And I will not discount. I do believe that there's generational stuff that comes through, and that's been documented now. But that can be dealt with, and we need to make some changes that have just been with us for generations and generations. And one of them, for instance, is the treatment of women. So many women can't find their voice because there's a background of being in situations where they weren't allowed to talk, or they were punished for talking, or something like that. And so, and then if you look around, there's been a lot of talk over the years of people who are not able to be emotional and show their love and say I love you. And some of that is ancestral because of what we've been through. And so those are things that I try to help someone heal and to find, who am I really, and then they can find their path and we can work together to create their new life.
That's really great. I really appreciate that approach. And I can tell already that you're on the same side I'm on, which is there's nothing wrong with young people. There's nothing wrong with youth today. Um, it's weird because I'm not young anymore. I'm in my 40s, but I still feel very defensive when people talk negatively about older people and about younger people. I'm in the middle, but I've always disliked both my whole life. I always respected my grandfather was a wonderful, optimistic man, and he had love for everyone, and he used words that in his generation were progressive and in my generation weren't, but the love and the enthusiasm behind them was real and palpable. And so it like that protected me from like a certain form of bigotry that I think affects a lot of young people.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, with all that said, do you feel like our culture, specifically the American culture, is I feel this, so I'm asking what you think, and I'm looking to you for wisdom. Just to be clear, this is not a gotcha question. I feel like we're wobbly right now. It's not that we're going downhill or uphill. I just feel like we're almost like spinning and like and trying to figure out which direction to go in. I'm curious if A, you feel that, and B, as a human behavioralist, as a woman, as a very accomplished PhD, everything that you have, how do you feel about all that? Hey everyone, if you're a fan of the show, please head over to mikeyop.com and click the subscribe button. It's the best way to support us, and it's free. That's MIKEYOPP.com. Thanks.
I agree. I think we are very wobbly, and I do think that COVID put a big stick in stirring the mud, and I believe that with all the changes that are happening and the polarization of people, I really believe this, you really believe that, we can't talk.
Yeah, yeah.
I think we are all grieving and we don't realize it.
Huh.
And that is one reason why we all feel so stressed.
Wow.
Because it's not being dealt with. Um, and part of it is because we don't know how to talk about grief. And I think we need to, get that open because we're grieving for the life we used to have. We're grieving for, something that was before COVID and is no longer. And that's human behavior. That's human. You are used to something and all of a sudden it's gone. And it's like, what's happened? My whole world has changed. And it doesn't have to be great big things.
Yeah, that's truly profound. I've never thought about it that way. I have noticed that COVID is the marking point. I've noticed that it's like, while that event may be perceived by some as political, it actually wasn't political. It really was a spontaneous human event, unlike any other that our generations have witnessed. We've read
Right.
about them, and you're right. You're 100% right from my perspective that I am mourning the loss of a pre-COVID culture, but I also am totally aware it's never coming back. So there's no argument
Yeah.
on my side, which I
Yeah.
think is called acceptance, I guess. But I'm very curious about a specific question about all this, which is a lot of people are just too busy. It might be an excuse they're making, but it's real to them. They're too busy to cook dinner. They just want to put something in the microwave or get food delivered. They're too busy being stressed to pay attention to the news or anything that's going on. They're also, in my opinion, too busy to deal with what you're talking about, which is what if I'm grieving something? What if I'm actually really upset that this isn't just externalities? There's something internally. These people not only are too busy to seek help, but they would also usually say, I also don't have the financial resources to seek help because we live in a country where it's not free and it's not probably gonna be free. How does a person who's too busy and too poor to seek mental help get mental help, in your opinion?
Well, there are a lot of opportunities to get some free help. And,
Okay.
there's community things. It's not going to be, excuse me, it may be groups. It probably won't be one-on-one, like if you had the wherewithal to hire somebody. But there's things out there and we need to seek them out. And then on the other side of it, we need to create these things for people because there's not enough. If the suicide crisis hotline is no longer in the US, that's for me appalling. I have used that with clients, and so I'm going, what do we do now? Our profession demands that we get we let somebody know about this, and so it makes it difficult for professionals who are helping people, and it makes it difficult for people who are feeling that negative. Makes it difficult for parents and friends who are trying to be supportive. And we just need more. We just need more. And with withdrawing, excuse me, funds for these kinds of things, it's making it very, very difficult.
Yeah. Thanks for that. That was very candid, and it it's painful for me to witness the acceleration of for-profit psychological help specifically, because while I understand it and I'm not a moron and I'm not naive, it is disheartening because it's the same reason I wish hospitals were free. I wish doctors got free education to become a doctor so they weren't in debt, and then they were, I just wish. But
Yeah.
but it also ties into like a weird question that I had earlier, but it's prominent. Sometimes when I get really down, I'm not prone to depression at all. It's not really in my nature. I'm quite optimistic, but I've had enough events and I've had things that are real happen which cause depression. So it's not an alien emotion I'm feeling with nothing attached to it. It's I literally miss my son, or I miss, something.
Yeah.
In those moments, while I don't believe in heaven the way you described it, I absolutely believe that my spirit, my soul will continue, and I believe that that is a bigger part than what I am. And
Yes.
I look forward to that, and sometimes I'm actually worried by how much I look forward to that, because sometimes I'm just like, oh, just take me tonight. Like, why can't I so I'm curious how you deal with that, because I can tell you look forward to heaven. You seem to have a healthy approach towards death and dying. How do you temper that actually? Because if there's a place that's better than here, why are we here?
Well, I believe it's all connected. I believe our souls do continue. And I have had the experience of past life experiences, and I believe that our souls have contracts with what we are supposed to learn and grow in each lifetime, and the things that we are supposed to contribute to humanity. And yes, we do have free will. We can just say, no, I'm not doing that. And a lot of people do.
Yeah.
But then there's other people who are seekers, and they want to know, they want to be aware. Um, Evidently, generations ago, people were much more in tune with those sorts of things. Um, and it's kind of been lost and squashed, because um, our intuition is is really important. And if we can learn to listen to it, but we've just, blocked it off. So people that do listen to it are able to do some things that others can't.
That's a great answer. I think just to give you the pushback I give myself. So, like, because you're used to hearing this, usually when the intuitive message sounds, it sounds like it's going to change me. And then I use that as an excuse not to follow it. Like, I'll be like, well, hold on now. If I started doing that, I would lose Mike. Like, I wouldn't be me anymore. I'd be listening to you. Do you ever feel that? Have you ever like dealt with that? Is that a common human behavior?
I think that's somewhat common. I think the question to ask yourself is, what am I supposed to learn from this?
I like that. I like that a lot.
So we go through things, and we have these experiences, and woe is me, and why me, and on and on. If we could turn that around and ask ourselves, what am I supposed to learn from this? How can I turn the negative into a positive? Just think how much happier everybody would be, and it'd be a different environment that we lived in.
Yeah. And it's interesting because the reason I do the messages and I do follow them now is that I realized if everyone's just waiting for everyone else to be good and kind, that's never going to work. So clearly, in the face of what I perceive as unkindness and blah blah blah, I just need to be kind and not and be indifferent to whether it affects others or not, but just be proud of myself for trying harder. With that said, uh, you seem I can tell intuitively that you are like a very bright, young girl, young woman in an era where that was probably not exactly like encouraged and blossoming. I have two young daughters. I'm married to a wife. I went to a women's graduate school as like a weird experiment that they allowed guys to. I am not a feminist because I don't like that word and I don't like the way it's used, and especially as a man, it just feels weird to wear it. But I care deeply about what we spoke about earlier, about the patriarchal divide and what it's done to us. What is something you wish you could go back in time and tell young you about being a young girl, despite patriarchy and all that? Like, what's some advice you would have for yourself when you were about 13, 14, let's say?
This is one thing that I really like to work with my clients on, and that is that I believe at any point in time in your life, you have what you need for that moment. And as you go through life, you accumulate more and more and more. But it's trust yourself because you have what you need. Now, you may not be able to figure out what that is. And that's when you ask for help from someone that knows how to help you. Um, I think one of the things we do is we talk to our friends or people that aren't qualified, so we don't get the kind of guidance that would help us break through those things. But we everything is a lesson. Every decision we make, every experience we have is a lesson and part of our growth.
Wow. Thank you so much, Lynn. That was incredible. There will be notes for how to find you for anyone listening who's curious and wants more. But I do always give my guests the floor at the end of the episode if there's anything you feel like you didn't get a chance to share or something you just want to share with them. So is there anything you'd like to tell us?
Well, that's usually my big thing because I truly believe, that, and we have forgotten that we are growing that way and we're equipped that way. And so when we feel so lost, um, it's that's human, that happens. And it's so important to go back and say, okay, where's the evidence?
I like that.
Yeah, where's the evidence? I'm an idiot. No, where's the evidence? People that have that self-talk, and that's constant, that stuff goes on in your head all the time.
Yeah.
And so I think that we really need to tune into our bodies and try to become aware of what our body is telling us, because it's an amazing, amazing machine.
Yeah. I really appreciate that. Lynn, thank you. I appreciate you so much. Everyone has an energy and everyone's is different, but like the moment you came on the Zoom call, I was just like, oh, this is going to be a great time. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was wonderful.
You're awesome. And I'm really glad that you're still here with us and that you're giving this wisdom to people, because a lot of people would quit when they had as much loss as you did, and especially that close together. And you didn't. And instead, you made lemonade. It's delicious. Thank you. You're awesome. Yeah, of course. As I mentioned earlier, there will be in the notes section an easy link to find Lynn and her work and to read more. And if you're interested in supporting Coffin Talk, just please head over to mikeyop.com and sign up for the free email that comes out once a week. Thank you to everyone watching and listening. Once again, you have been watching Coffin Talk with Lynn Banis, and my name is Mike Oppenheim, and we will see you soon.